Emily Munn and welcome back to my channel. I'm so glad you're here today and I'm really looking forward to today's video. So if you're just joining for the first time or you're just finding my channel, I do work full-time in a corporate space, but I also like to come on this channel and talk about reselling on Poshmark and fashion and style related videos. So if those types of videos sound interesting to you, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you like it and subscribe to my YouTube channel. It definitely helps a lot. And without further ado, let's get into this video. Today I want to talk about something that's been on my mind a lot in the past year, which is how to find inventory to resell on Poshmark even if your big box thrift stores just suck. And this has been something that I've been dealing with for the past year, and I just want to share 4 different alternatives to find inventory to resell on Poshmark successfully if your big box thrift stores do not have the items that you like to resell. I don't want to have too much of a story time, but I do want to provide just a little bit of context. So I've been thrifting for around 4.5 years and reselling on Poshmark for about the same amount of time. And for the first 3.5 years, I was able to find a ton of inventory to resell on Poshmark pretty easily at my big box thrift stores, which are places like Goodwill, Salvation Army, the DAV, Savers, those types of places. But what I found over the past year is that a lot of the big box thrift stores in my area have begun to put quite a bit of their inventory online, and there's also just more competition at those places. So in this video, I want to share places that you can shop successfully to resell on Poshmark that I've started to go to because I can't find as much inventory at my traditional thrift stores. And this is something that I've had to be very creative with. It's been a struggle in my business to find a lot of inventory over the past year, but I hope this helps inspire you and remind you that you can be creative in how you source your inventory to resell on Poshmark rather than just thinking there's only one way to do it. So as I go through this video, if you think of other things I missed and other ways to find inventory, definitely leave them in the comments down below. I would love for us to learn from each other and think outside the box and how to find inventory, because sourcing, while it's a really fun part of reselling, it's sometimes hard to find enough inventory to really get your profits up. And so I hope this inspires you to think of a few more areas to find inventory. With each of these options, I'll go through the pros and cons of the different options, as well as provide an example of something I found from one of these options that I'm reselling. Let's get started. The first alternative to big box thrift stores that I want to talk about is retail arbitrage, which is something that I've been doing a ton of over the past year. So when I think of retail arbitrage, I'm thinking of going to places like TJ Maxx or Nordstrom Rack and trying to find items that are a really good price that I can turn around and flip for a great profit on Poshmark. And there are definitely pros and cons to retail arbitrage. It's not for everyone. I'm not expecting it to be for everyone. But what I like about it is I know that I can spend a certain amount of time in a retail arbitrage store, and if I pick a good one, I'm almost guaranteed to find items to resell. So it is a great place to go if you're really short on time and you know when you're gonna leave that store that most likely, if you're willing to pay up for items, you're gonna find something to resell on Poshmark. The other thing that I found to be true for retail arbitrage stores is that they typically carry a lot more current trendy pieces that will sell more quickly for me on Poshmark. And this is not always the case. You do have to be careful when you do this type of sourcing, but in general, I find more trendy, desired pieces at retail arbitrage stores. On the flip side, retail arbitrage can be extremely expensive. So I think when you're shopping retail arbitrage, what you really want to do is be looking up comparable solds on anything you buy in the store. So you're taking a calculated risk. So let's say I find a pair of girlfriend denim jeans, which I found a pair recently. I'll leave them on the screen so you can see what they look like. But essentially, I needed to look up comparable solds on this particular item before deciding to pay up for it. So you just have to keep your cost in mind because it is initially more expensive than a thrift store. But I think if you do the research and you really look up comparable solds, you can end up finding some amazing items at a retail arbitrage store that will sell quickly, and you can spend a little bit less time searching, at least in my experience. The second alternative is different types of thrift stores than your traditional big box thrift store. And I know you're like, Emily, you just said that you're not shopping at thrift stores as much, But I think there is an exception to the big box thrift store, a very distinct exception to it that I want to talk through, because there are places you can thrift where not everything has been put online and there's not as much competition. The two options that I personally like to shop that I think are good alternatives to big box thrift stores are small mom and pop thrift stores and also the Goodwill outlet. At these alternative thrift stores, I think there are a few pros and cons that need to be called out. So with the smaller thrift stores or the Goodwill outlet, I find that the prices are a lot less. If you're not aware, if you go to a Goodwill outlet, you're paying by the pound, so you're paying significantly less money. And I also find that not as many items are pulled to be put online because for whatever reason, they're not taking the time to do that. So they're not hiring somebody to pull as many items to go to an online shop. And that's just been my experience, but I find that to be true with both mom and pop thrift stores and the Goodwill outlet. On the flip side of that, I think the con of these alternative thrift stores is you really have to spend time to find the right stores. So I'll give you an example. I don't have a Goodwill outlet in my area, but I've been to several of them, and it took me a while to go to another location and find one that actually had the type of inventory that I like to sell. And same with mom and pop thrift stores. I've tried a ton of them. A lot of them didn't work, but I finally have found one in my area that caters to the type of items that I like to sell. The price is right, and I really like the cause that alternative small mom and pop thrift store supports as well. So it does take time to find the right ones. I think you have to be patient, but if you are patient, I think you can get a lot of inventory to resell in a different kind of an environment than a big box thrift store. You can spend less money. You just have to take the time to find the honey holes. A couple of examples of pieces I found at these alternative thrift stores. One is this Moschino snakeskin bag. And I feel like this is something that I would have never found at a place like Goodwill because they would have pulled it. But for some reason, they hadn't pulled it at this small town mom and pop thrift store, and it ended up selling really, really well. And it was just a great piece. And then as far as finding things at a Goodwill outlet, I recently went up to the Minneapolis area and went to a Goodwill bins up there, and I found a pair of Lululemon Dance Studio pants. They only cost me 33 cents, which is absolutely crazy, but they sold really quickly. And again, this is an item I think that a traditional big box thrift store would have probably pulled or marked a lot higher than what I found it at the Goodwill bins. The third alternative that I want to talk through is traveling to other places to find inventory to resell on Poshmark. And I know this can take a lot of time, and that is something you have to consider. A lot of money for gas and hotels. But what I found is I like to combine trips I go on. So let's say I'm going on a weekend trip to Kansas City with a couple hours for thrifting. I think the pro of that is if you go to a bigger city, I live in Wichita, Kansas, so Kansas City is a little bit bigger than here. But if you go to a bigger city, there is brand new inventory that you can search through to resell. And I think there's just a lot more options in bigger cities than smaller ones in some cases. So I like to, whenever I take a trip, combine a couple of hours of thrifting with it, and I think you can really find some amazing items if you keep your eyes open. Obviously, you definitely have to keep an eye on a cost when doing this and make sure it's worth your time. But what I like to do is combine many different thrift stores or many different retail arbitrage stores in one trip so I can get the most bang for my buck. And usually I don't make a special trip to thrift at this point. It has to be something really special for me to do it in a different town. Instead, I'll go ahead and just go thrifting or go to a retail arbitrage store, buy, sell, trade, whatever, when I'm already in that different location traveling. An example of something I found when doing this was this Faithful the Brand Ari midi dress, and I found this when I was at Posh Fest in 2019, which was in Phoenix, Arizona. And I just combined some thrifting trips and retail arbitrage trips with the regular conference that I was going to, and ended up finding some great pieces. So this was a great sale, and I just worked it into my day to go find some deals and some things to resell that were not some things I would normally find in my area. The final alternative that I want to talk about is something I say all the time. But tell your friends and family that you resell on Poshmark and you would be interested in anything that they would be donating or don't want anymore. And this can be tricky because what I found over the past is that there's a lot of items that people think are worth a lot of money because they're in their personal wardrobe, but they don't resell extremely well. However, on the flip side of that, this can be a way to get inventory for free or a discounted price. And time again, this has worked great for me. So I let my friends and family know that if they have anything that they don't want anymore, I will take it and either donate it or resell it. And sometimes I'll get things for free. Sometimes I'll pay some sort of a price for each item. Either way works. I don't have to spend the time at a big box thrift store searching through a lot of items and not finding much. I can get inventory instead from friends and family, and it's worked out really well for me. I'm gonna give you an example of this type of situation because I think it provides a little bit more light to how you could handle if you get a bunch of inventory from friends or family. So my aunt, she had a lot of clothes and she was looking to donate a large amount of them. And she still has plenty of clothes left, but there was like, I think 5 or 6 trash bags worth of clothing that she wanted to donate. And so I went ahead and told her that I resell on Poshmark, and she gave those items to me for free, which was awesome. So what I did is I separated items into 2 piles. Items to send to ThredUp, and any items that didn't sell on ThredUp I just donated, and items to resell on Poshmark. I ended up with just a few items to resell on Poshmark that I got for free. One of them is this Patagonia jacket that I'll leave up there that ended up reselling pretty well, and I got it for free and I didn't have to go and search for items. So definitely, I know it can be overwhelming to get a ton of items that somebody was gonna donate, but just separate things into 2 piles if you do get items, and you can send items to ThredUp. I'll leave a link down below to ThredUp. That's what I like to send things to, donate them or resell them on Poshmark. Just a great way to get inventory, and it's totally different. You don't get it every day doing it this way, but I think if you're vocal and passionate about what you do with reselling, it will show, and people will think of you before they're donating their items and maybe give them to you instead. Those are really the 4 alternatives that I use to find inventory to resell on Poshmark. And again, this is not a comprehensive list. So like I said at the beginning of the video, if you have other alternatives to big box thrift stores, leave them down below and we can learn from each other. But I hope this inspires you to be more creative with your sourcing for Poshmark, and encourages you that if you're having trouble thrifting, that you're not the only one, and I've been there too. I have the same problem, and I found different alternatives that work for me, and it doesn't have to be just one type of thrift store that you go to in order to find your inventory. So hopefully you enjoyed this video, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. I'll talk to you next time. Bye.